how was Stuart Little born? A lot of people forget this. The movie Stuart Little, he's adopted, but in the book of Stuart Little, the mom gives birth to a mouse, and it's never explained how.
So Matt Walsh read Stuart Little.
Matt Walsh
and that influenced his political
and
views.
Then he watched Cow and Chicken on Cartoon Network and was like, Mommy, is this real?
Hello, lovely people. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you are new. My name is Emma. Today's video is a conversation between myself and Savy Writes Books. Once again, Emma and Savy are reviewing terrible books with weirdly political takes. This is our thing now. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Matt Walsh's Johnny the Walrus, which is a very confusing children's book question mark. Basically involves a lot of fear tactics, a lot of very weird exaggerations. In this video, we're going to specifically be talking about issues around the book, the way the book deals with trans people getting medical care, things like that. So this is more of a discussion part. If you'd like to see us go through the whole book, it's a very short board book for kids. You can go and do that on Savy's channel. I'll leave a link down below. Chronologically, that'll come first, but you can watch this in any order. Please do enjoy the video. Go and show Savy some love. Consider subscribing, give the video a like. All of those lovely things really, really help. I hope you enjoy.
In my experience, people who are pro-LGBTQ, pro-gender equality generally want to allow kids more freedom to figure out what they personally like without having to bring gender roles into it. So, like, for example, if Johnny, in this case, were to want to put on a princess costume, the majority of like feminists on the internet would probably be like, oh, he looks cute. I don't think the majority would be like, oh my God, he must be a girl, because the majority of people who believe in gender equality want to allow, you know, little girls the ability to dress up as Batman and little boys the ability to dress up as princesses and everybody the ability to do whatever they want, because eliminating gender stereotypes is part of the path to equality in the first place. So I don't think most people would be like, Johnny must be trans. And if Johnny himself had been like, Mom, I think I might be a girl, then I think then there would be a conversation about, what does that mean to you? Does that mean you in the future may want to grow up to be like, because from what I've heard, little kids who think they might be trans might be like, if it were their parents see them and assume that they're like if this is Johnny and he's like, Mom's like, this is Johnny, my little boy, and Johnny's like, Mom, when I grow up I'm gonna be a mommy, right, and I'm gonna have babies, right, and things like that, and then the mom might be like, oh, okay, well, what is that? And then they'd have a conversation about that, but there would be no medical intervention until puberty time, if puberty blockers were going to be part of it, and that would again be under the supervision of a psychiatrist and a doctor. And if beyond that there was going to be any hormone treatment, that would happen post-puberty, and if there was going to be any surgery, that would happen in adulthood. So the whole idea that this is being pushed on little kids, I've never seen it happen. I just need Matt or someone to provide me one example of this happening, and then we can talk about that.
Yeah, and I know it's the point of the book is that everything is pushed to this extreme stereotype.
Yeah, even
like the Matt Walsh being the hero is kind of almost seems like him making fun of himself, which I kind of appreciate. But I think part of why trans people are fed up with this, you know, whether it's a joke or whatever, is because, you know, being a boy, being a girl, being non-binary, it's all just a gentle scale of different kinds of people. The old joke of it's like wanting to be object or animal or whatever is like so dehumanizing and just lazy, and like, you know, the whole thing that he's a walrus is just, I don't know, it just strikes me as very insensitive.
Well, so Matt even brought this up in one of his videos. He talked about how he said he was reacting to either Samantha Lux or Sam Collins or somebody. He was reacting to one of the trans reviewers who said, this book sucks. And basically he said, well, no one on your side has ever given me a good argument as to how a boy wanting to be a girl is any different from a boy wanting to be a walrus. And in the video that I made, I started trying to debunk it. And then I was like, wait, I need to focus this video on the book reviewing element of it. But now that we're actually reviewing the book, here's my thoughts on why that is. The difference, for anyone who wants to know this, first of all, it is not entirely known medically yet what causes someone to be trans, just like it isn't entirely medically known what causes someone to be gay. But we've recognized that these are real things that people experience, and there's still studies being done. Maybe in the future we'll know specifically what combination of atoms and and cells causes it to happen or something. But right now it's still unknown exactly what it is. But when two parents get together, a man and a woman love each other very much. They pound dick into pussy and make a baby, right? The baby comes out. The baby's forming in there. That baby now has the ability to form based on, if a certain chromosome goes in there, generally if there's two X chromosomes that go in there, usually from there a vagina is going to form, and that person is going to grow up to have a higher concentration of estrogen and potentially the ability to carry children. That is usually what happens. Sometimes something happens where that's not what happens. Sometimes something happens where that person's brain patterns then become more in line with the brain patterns of a different gender. However, the brain patterns thing isn't an exact science either, because it has since been found that, cisgender men and butch lesbians tend to have similar brain patterns the same way as cisgender men and trans men have brain patterns and things like that. So some of the brain pattern scans that they've done could be focused on social influences as well. So there's just a whole lot of factors involved here that what goes into determining how someone's sexual development is going to develop over time is very complicated, and sometimes things go different than how you're expecting. Regardless of all of that, there's never been a situation where two humans conceive a child and it comes out as a walrus. It's never happened. If it ever happens, then come back to me and maybe you'll have a point. But it has been shown to happen that kids can come out with intersex conditions. Kids can come out without any intersex conditions, but still have something that's making them being drawn to being like, no, my body's actually supposed to be this way, and that they'll have a better quality of life if you let them do that. And it's still not entirely known what causes that, but something does, and nothing causes them to be a walrus. That's the difference. There's no medical basis for a kid being a walrus.
Even if, you make the argument that it's some kind of social intervention that, whatever, the feminists are making kids trans or whatever.
Putting chemicals in the water to be fair,
turning the kids trans and the frogs gay.
The chemicals in the water actually did kind of make the frogs trans. Like, that was actually found, like, a lot of frogs were having...
Some frogs were naturally trans, though, as well.
Some frogs were naturally trans, and some frogs were growing the other genitals that you weren't expecting. So some of the frogs were trans. Sorry, it's off topic.
It should have been a frog in the book instead of a walrus. I guess Johnny the Walrus might have more of a ring to it.
Dude, Johnny the Walrus should have been Johnny the Frog. Johnny with the chemicals. That would have been hilarious, because then, some people say the left can't meme, the right can't meme. If the right could meme, why wasn't he Johnny the Frog? That's my question.
Yeah.
Actually, to be fair, whoever this artist is, I don't know this artist's particular political views, but this artist can meme. Matt Walsh can't, though. If Matt Walsh could meme, he would be Johnny the Frog. And Tyler in the background just brought up a great point of, how was Stuart Little born? A lot of people forget this. The movie Stuart Little, he's adopted, but in the book of Stuart Little, the mom gives birth to a mouse, and it's never explained how. And what about the show Cow and Chicken? Mama had a chicken, mama had a cow, dad was proud, he didn't care how. You know what? Maybe Matt's onto something. You can't have a cow or a chicken or a mouse baby. Maybe you can have a walrus baby.
So Matt Walsh read Stuart Little.
And
that influenced his political views.
And then he watched Cow and Chicken on Cartoon Network and was like, Mommy, is this real? So that's what's happening, is they're putting Cow and Chicken on the TV and turning all the kids trans. What's happening?
Oh my God, I've completely lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's all right. All I was going to say was, even if you argue that it's completely socially driven, which is, like you say, we don't know the science well enough to say either way or make any definitive arguments, so that's fine if that's what you think, but still socially people aren't trying to transition into being trains or whatever the joke of the day is. It's still within, how inconsequential are humans in the grand scheme of the universe? If one human feels like they are actually a very slightly different kind of human, it's very different from being weird species of like semi-aquatic mammal. I don't know, it's just,
well, I've had people bring this argument up to me of, if we lived in a world where there were no gender stereotypes at all, would trans people still exist? Like, if we reached a future where whether you're born with a vagina, a penis, whatever, the world won't ascribe any different roles to you. You will have no different expectations. There will be no social pressures of anything. Would trans people still exist? I think they would, because I think the physical dysphoria element is very real for a lot of people. And I will say, coming from a position of like, so I'm not trans, I'm a cisgender woman, but I experienced pretty bad body dysphoria for a long time before I got my surgery on my chest. So if anyone doesn't know, I had breast reduction 2 months ago. And since then, I felt at home in my body. Before then, I spent almost 30 years of my life feeling like I wasn't, I guess not 30 years. I didn't have boobs when I was born. I spent a good 20 years, let's say, of my life feeling like I did not belong in my body and not being able to see myself and looking and saying, I don't know who this person is. When I got the surgery, I feel like perfectly happy as who the person that I am now. Like I have no issues whatsoever. So that made me even more confident of like, okay, there is something to be said for like, if you're in a body that doesn't feel like it's right for you, and you know that fixing this one thing is going to help you feel like the person that you're supposed to be. And the vast majority of trans people who have said like, yeah, I'm much more content in my body now. Why not just like let people do what makes them happy? The argument here is that sometimes people detransition, sometimes people get a procedure and then later realize that it was wrong for them. So the things about that are, first of all, the percentage of people that happens to is artificially inflated, because the surveys that I've showed sources for this when I did my Dave Rubin video part 2. People, the detransition numbers are, it's counted whenever someone goes off of hormone treatment, which for the majority of people, they don't go off of hormone treatment because they want to permanently stop transitioning, but because they either can't afford it at that time, or someone in their family has threatened to cut them off and they need that family member support for something, or they've been, you know, bullied too much by other people and decide, you know, I'm going to pause this for the moment until I'm in a better place. And then it was found that I think the majority of people who stop when they're in a better situation go back to it. So the actual study numbers of the number of people who permanently detransition is about like 0.3 to 0.4% of total trans people. So it's a very small number. That, and like when you do something as an adult, there's always the potential to regret it. Having a child, there have been studies that found that giving birth has a 7% regret rate. Now, I don't know how much of that's artificially inflated depending on what population they surveyed, but there have been studies that found that having a child has a 7% regret rate, yet we don't get mad at people for wanting to have children. So it's like anything you do that's a permanent action always carries the risk of regret. But overall, it's generally good to do something that statistically over time has been shown to improve the majority of the lives of the people who do it. So that's how I see it. Let people live their life and be happy, dude.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the very rare occasions where, you know, I think I've read one story that had a series of articles about it, of somebody who transitioned fairly young and felt that they hadn't got enough time with medical professionals and psychiatrists and stuff. And those occasions are, like I say, that's the only one that I can think of, but I feel that's an entirely separate issue of the healthcare system that is like a whole separate kettle of fish to talk about. And I think that shouldn't be, that person's experience shouldn't be used as a scare tactic to frighten off people when the success rate is so high and changes so many people's lives.
I mean, I can talk to my own personal experience, which is that a couple, like, so I've always been a fairly like non-conventional woman. I'm not like followed stereotypes very well. You know, a lot of people pointed out, like a lot of people who harass me on the internet point out that, like, you know, you have body hair and you cut your hair short and you might as well be a man. I don't look like a man, first of all, but well, people would say things like that to me. I do. I look like a man, you guys. No, I don't. And it's like, and I don't always like dress in the most gender conforming way. I mean, today I have a woman's shirt on, but I think that depends on the day or whatever, you know? So a lot of people would say things like that to me. And it's like, you know, I'm into powerlifting, I'm trying to bulk up. And so it's like, I have this, I'm trying to get this muscular body and I don't always follow the feminine gender stereotypes and I'm attracted to other women. There was a point in my life that because I've been very heavily body dysphoric for a long time with how my chest was, right? So my chest was giving me like this constant, I don't belong in my body. So there was a point in my 20s where I spent about 3 years wondering, am I actually supposed to be trans? Because my body feels very wrong to me. And I don't feel like I fit in with like a lot of these things that people tell me are universal female experiences. I don't experience them. I have no desire to give birth to children. I've never felt a maternal instinct before. All of these things, like all of these stereotypes that female business gurus tell me are like universal experiences that women have. They've just never like intersected with me. So I'm like, maybe this is a thing. So when I went to my psychiatrist and I talked about it, he basically said, okay, well, before we do anything else, let's try to increase your OCD medication. So that was the first thing that he did. There was no like effort. And I was 25 or 6. I think I was 26 when I did that. I was 26. So I was not even a child. I was 26. And I told my psychiatrist this, and he was not like, yeah, here's your testosterone. He was like, let's try to increase your OCD medication and see if this is something involved with, you know, your anxieties about yourself and things like that. So I increased it. And honestly, that did help at the beginning. So I'm like, okay, maybe it's going to be okay. But I still felt the intense dysphoria. Then I got my breast reduction. And now my increased medication combined with having the surgery that made me feel at home with myself. Now I'm like, no, I feel good now. I'm happy to be a woman. I have no desire to change anything else. And so now I'm good. So my point is that like, I very well, I guess, could have been a detransitioner, but it was never like pushed on me as like, yeah, actually you need to take this and it's immediate. So that's kind of a myth that didn't happen. At least in my experience, didn't happen. And part of it is because I wasn't confident in it. If someone knows and is confident and certain of it, that's very different than someone who's just questioning or suspecting something. That's just my experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. And you know, like we said, any situation that is otherwise, where anything is pushed onto somebody, any situation in which somebody is pushing things onto you medically before even the first discussion anyway, is like a situation where you've not got a good doctor. And that should be the discussion, rather than being trans is, you know, bad or you'll regret it or whatever.
Right.
I don't know if you've ever read any of the Culture novels by Ian Banks.
No,
I think I've mentioned them on before whenever I've talked about like trans issues and stuff, because that question of if we lived in a utopia and there were no gender stereotypes, would people still be trans? Ian Banks says yes. And
I think so, yeah.
Part of that world, I mean, it's a sci-fi, but it's a sci-fi based around a like utopian culture where everyone can do anything, wear anything, be anything. There's no, they don't really understand stereotyping and things like that because it's a perfect culture. And it's very easy to transition in their culture. And so people will be male for a while and then transition to female because they fancy it for a bit, or because that's what they prefer, or to have a child and then they transition back. And I really like that as an answer to that question, you know, of would being trans still exist? Well, yes, because people are still going to have, like you say, people are still going to have body dysphoria. People are still going to feel better. It's even things like, I don't want to make a stupid analogy and offend anyone, but even things like, you know, conforming to gender stereotypes, like even just changing the type of wardrobe you wear day to day can make you feel better. And it's like, doing those things, if it helps, what's the harm, you know? And then I guess people like Matt Walsh are saying, well, kids and detransitioning and stuff, but then we know that that's vastly over exaggerated, and the positive results so far outweigh the negative that it's not an argument for people, it's an argument for tradition. And I think part of what really annoys me about it is that they make it an argument for people, and it's just not.
Well, I think you get some, like, I think there's like a subset of TERFs that are lesbians that have this argument that it's like, that is basically well, we want to eliminate gender stereotypes and there won't be trans people if we eliminate gender stereotypes, which again, there probably still will be, because first of all, we don't live in that world yet, but if in the future gender stereotypes were completely eliminated, there would, yes, still be physical dysphoria. There would still be people wanting to change their bodies and things like that. Even as I could say, as a person who is a woman and had dysphoria in a woman's body and needed to change the body of myself to match with what it was, like it's still going to exist, and it's still going to exist with people wanting to be a different gender. So that's part of it. But I think that there is this subset that it says like, well, you know, there are butch lesbians out there, and they're not men. They don't follow any female gender roles, but they're still women and things like that. And I think that that's like a lot of times conservatives and TERFs will team up, which is weird because it almost seems like a completely different argument, because then people like Matt Walsh who come in here are not spending the rest of their time trying to eliminate gender roles so that people can feel comfortable. Yeah. They're also upset at the idea of a boy wearing a dress to school, or upset at the idea of like two women getting together and getting married. Like they also don't like same-sex marriage. They also don't like, they want there to be like this gender social order that puts people in boxes. Yeah. So it can be very weird from what I've noticed, that like I have seen people who are anti-trans come at it from this perspective of, but what if we eliminated all gender roles? And it's like, I'm with you. There will still be dysphoria, and there will still be people who need to do things to live their best life. So like, you should probably just support them and not be a dick. But then there are people like Matt Walsh who like don't even try to make it from that angle. It literally is just like, men do this, women do this. If you don't like it, it's like what that one red pillar guy who said to me in the comments, if you don't like it, then you're a drain on the human race. The gene pool would be better without you. We're a weaker human race for having you in it. Like things like that. Like that's, I'm doing a reacting to hate comments video this Monday. That's what
I can't wait.
Okay, well, it was on the video. Okay, so it was me reacting to you. No, it was me reacting to the red pill guys, reacting to you, reacting to another red pill guy.
Yes.
So yeah, it was one of those. It was the downfall of society where we all just react to each other all day long. It's like the Bo Burnham skit, right? So that's what's going on there. And then a red pill fan came in the comments, and I was trying to explain to him like, no, I'm like legitimately not attracted to strong and dominant men. They turn me off. Like I legitimately want to be the bigger and stronger person in a relationship, and I don't want to have children. Like all this stuff, I'm like, maybe I'm an outlier, but like that's how I feel. And he's like, yeah, you're an outlier. The human race shouldn't have you in it if we had naturally selected for a stronger human race overall. But the feminists are ruining the natural selection to make the race weaker overall. So you would have been eliminated if things had happened the way that things were naturally supposed to happen. And I'm like, damn, I got called to get eugenicized. That's pretty amazing.
Wow, that's hardcore.
That's how you know you made it. All right. So Emma, what were your thoughts on Johnny the Walrus?
What are my thoughts? I mean, it's still as transphobic as I expected it to be. It is just rude. Like your description of Matt Walsh just being a rude person is, I think, the best way you can possibly describe him. Yeah. He's rude. He is Schrodinger's douchebag. I don't know what he was trying to do. Like your stuff about the board book being a lot more expensive has thrown me for a loop, because I'm like, if it wasn't, it doesn't make it seem like it was a cash grab, or it wasn't very sensible if it was a cash grab. So like, I just don't know what he's doing.
The board book choice is throwing me off, dude. I have no idea why he made this a board book.
But like, the art is funny.
Art's
like
hilarious.
I think anyone who is like a bit of a feminist, a bit of a lefty, or whatever, you know, the people that Matt Walsh is trying to make fun of, I think that those people, and including myself, can look at the stereotypes of like, you know, the Starbucks thing and like all the Twitter things, and I can see that, I see myself in that and laugh. So I do kind of like that about it. That's its only saving grace, I think, for me, is the sort of the humor in the art. Everything else is just kind of hot garbage and I could do without it.
Honestly, the one thing I like about this book is the doctor having a Twitter check mark on
that was good.
The certificate on that was a legitimately hilarious joke. That Matt Walsh did not make that joke, the artist made that joke. So shout out to the artist for making that joke. Everything Matt Walsh did was stupid and bad. What the artist did was, with the Twitter check mark, that was like a legitimately hilarious joke, and so hats off to you for that, my dude.
Yeah, there were a couple of actual jokes in there thanks to the art that were funny, so it's a tiny bit redeemable, but not much.
So that was Johnny the Walrus, guys. Let us know in the comments which book you would like us to review next. We have some plans to read some Ben Shapiro books, to read The Transformed Wife, some of that kind of stuff. We've got some gross shit coming your way, but Johnny the Walrus, man, it just came out. Don't buy it, it sucks. Maybe I'll make a giveaway and give this copy away, because I'm not doing anything with it. Same with Ladies First. I just get these to review and then I don't know what I'm doing with them.
Yeah. Auction them off. Give the money to like trans charities or something.
That's a good idea.